What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro. I'm joined by comic creator Stephen Prince. Thanks for coming back, man.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me again.
Dude, I'm excited. I always like when I bring creators back on because I feel like I can just have other parts of the conversation sometimes, because there's always like the first time, like, how'd you get into comics? How did you get? I can't do that with you because this is like your third time on the show.
We
Like,
know already, right?
we've already heard it, Greg. We
Heard it 3 times already, man.
like, well, let's see how many of you guys actually listen to my podcast. Just
Right.
do the exact same podcast over and over. The first 4 questions of with the same person. So I'm gonna ask you this: and how have you been? How have you been doing lately? What's been going on?
I've been good. Like everybody, I've been kind of excited about things getting back to a little bit of normal. Just been getting back to normal, making comics, making Monster Matador, and getting my kids out of the house, which is nice.
Right? That's the
best part of it. I probably look more awake and better than I did on the last couple of interviews because I've been getting.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but
I think so, yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad you're back. And you mentioned every time I've had you on, we talked about your world of Monster Matador, and because you have created one of the most vast universes, I feel like it, because I'm trying to think how many issues of Monster Matador, because you've done like 3 Kickstarters. You got this one now that we'll talk about in a bit, but then you did a whole bunch of Monster Matador stuff yourself for a while. Like,
yeah, I did 12 issues, which kind of set the whole thing up and kind of established this universe. And it's a kind of it's sort of between the sort of like, it's like almost post-apocalyptic. It's kind of like getting there, it's kind of like when you think of like the first Mad Max, where it's not quite Road Warrior yet.
Right.
But you see that happening, and the Monster Matador is the guy who's like, he's trying to kind of stop it. And even though we focus on the one character, there are all these monsters that kind of come and arise and attack all over the world. What we get hints of is that, like, there are other, kaiju fighters out there. There's a bigger kind of world out there that we open up. And in the new Kickstarter, we actually, the first one was in Guatemala, and this one he travels all the way to South Africa. And he meets up with this kind of mysterious woman who's recruited all these monster fighters from around the world to take on this ancient evil that has arisen and is sort of turning South Africans, animals and humans, into zombies. And this virus is kind of spreading and threatening to take over the world. And they're fighting. They're looking for the source of this thing so that they can contain it and kill it. So,
gang, it's and I got to preview a little bit of it because this is a one shot, but it's a lot bigger of a book than the previous series that you've done, right?
Yeah, it's 64 pages. This is something new that we're trying with Kickstarter. One of the things that it's a little, I mean, it can be a little frustrating with Kickstarter is that, you get an issue and then you got to wait 6 months. For some people it's okay because you get an issue and they just go in the pile, and by the time,
Yeah.
But it's right now we're trying to build like an audience, and we've always had the books completed before we ran the Kickstarter. So this book is completed. It's 64 pages. You'll get it in a few months once it's printed. But it's also a matter of like running 3 Kickstarters a year for, just one after the app. It's just like, it's exhausting. And I worry that, there's so much stuff right now, so much good stuff on Kickstarter, that it also gets exhausting for the audience, where you're just, so, and it's actually, like cost wise, by doing a single one shot, it actually brings the costs down for the people who pledge for the book, because
nice.
you're pledging for one book as opposed to like 3 or 4 or 5 books, and shipping in there all the time. So now you're just getting it in one shot. And so at least now we can look at it and be like, okay, we'll do one like once a year. So it can be kind of like an event or something like that. Or like, okay, it's the new Monster Matador is dropping now, as opposed to like, oh, Jesus Christ, it's doing another. Didn't I just like do the other one like a month ago?
Well,
So,
it's, I mean, because what was issue 3 of the last arc was early summer, right?
it was, yeah, it was spring.
Spring.
Yeah,
Okay.
spring, early summer. Yeah. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like a machine. And I mean, some people do them like clockwork,
Right.
but it's I don't know. I think for the for the people who are pledging, it's a better value. But I think also for me as a creator, it kind of like it just helps me manage it
Yeah.
better. And it with Fabio Alves, who's the artist, and Alex Zief, who is our colorist, it allows them to just kind of like focus on one book
Right.
rather than doing one issue, find another job. Oh wait, I got to come back and do this. So one of the important things for me throughout this like initial wave of Monster Matador has been the consistency of like the creative team.
Yeah.
If you've read the book or you kind of see the art, like Fabio is really good. He's done Banjax for Action Lab, which won a Ringo Award. He was nominated for Best Cover Artist. He's does The Jump, which is also on Kickstarter, which is also by our friend Rylan Grant.
Fans also know he did one of the dopest variant covers of all time.
Yeah, he did the Back to the Future one, which is very, very cool. So it's kind of like I can lock Fabio in for however long it takes to do the book. And it's also he tends to like for this book he kind of changed his style up a bit to match the story, and it's really influenced by a bit of a Bill Sienkiewicz feel to it.
Oh, now that you say that, okay, yeah.
You can see it. And Alex adjusted her coloring to it, so it kind of like it lets them focus and get in the groove, because he doesn't use that style for I know he doesn't use that style for The Jump. The Jump is a different style. It's similar, but it's not the same. So it kind of just lets him keep that.
Yeah, I was gonna say something, because I definitely, reading this book, I can tell it's Fabio through and through. Like the art is stands there, but there are slight altercations. So like you said, where it kind of has how the colors match up and sync up, that he definitely did a different tone to it, and I like that Bill Sienkiewicz kind of that's what you're linking it towards, and I can see that for sure.
Yeah, and poor Alex had to like actually like relearn how to color to do the book. But it's, I mean, she did a fantastic job.
She did.
She's
so we've been talking about your new book, and it's on Kickstarter today, gang. Go support it after this video, obviously. But what's the pitch? You kind of led into it a little bit, but like, what's the sell? Because people who watch the show, they know the universe you've created, but what's the pitch for this book?
This one, I mean, the elevator pitch, it's Predator versus zombies. Predator meets zombies. And if that doesn't excite you, I don't know what else I can say.
Let's turn off the video now. If Predator versus zombies doesn't sell you.
But so with every book, I try to come up with like a theme or a question or something that kind of drives the story. And I actually wrote this. I was writing this around the time when the COVID lockdowns hit, and I didn't quite have the monster yet. I was kind of like fiddling about and trying to figure out what it is that they were actually fighting. And then as COVID hit, I realized like the monster is like, how do you fight something? How do you fight it? Because it's a zombie. It's this thing that creates zombies. So the question is, how do you fight a virus, right? How do you fight something that you can't even see? So it's almost like this existential threat.
Yeah.
So the thrust of this is like, how does the Matador defeat a monster that doesn't even really like exist in a way that monsters exist?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thing. So it was kind of influenced by the whole, COVID lockdown, and it made total sense for the story. With zombies, you're always fighting the zombies, and there's zombies in this book, but it's also like, wait a minute, well, how do you fight the thing that creates the zombies? How do you fight that like existential idea or whatever? So it kind of adds a little twist to that kaiju formula.
And I love it. And well, what's interesting is it's weird to say this too, because your books, I feel like you get more and more bigger as it goes on. Like the events get bigger and bigger, which is crazy because you start out with fighting kaiju monsters, right?
Yeah.
Like, but it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, the scope, but I mean, the scope of the book is even more, in depth. The characters, and you started to see that with the last series of that you did with Monster Matador, where we got to see another Matador kind of come into the fold of what's that like. Oh, he's not the only one that does this. But now we're kind of seeing like kind of a departure even from that with this of there's different styles of monster fighters where you had, the Matador last time. Oh, there was another Matador fighter, but this is more of like, oh no, you've got some who like have big machine guns and
yeah. I mean, there's so for that original story, the reason why I set him up against another Matador, one of the reasons was it was a way to kind of like do character development and show the reader who he was as a character by kind of like putting him up against his opposite. So rather than doing all this exposition and like this is whatever, you can see it through just through their actions.
Right.
There was their ally, their main ally who went with them to fight the monster was a little person. And you could just see the type of characters they were just by how they treated him and how they interacted with him. And then with this one, so each book does open up the world more and more. And it's kind of designed to be like that. So the first book just kind of like gets the audience in, gets them to know the characters, like sets like, okay, this is it, fights the monster, boom. And this one begins to sort of pose more questions and answer questions about like the bigger world of like what happens when monsters hit,
Yeah.
And so the fun thing about this, like I said, it's kind of like Predator meets zombies, is you have all these different personalities. So one of the fun things we did was we actually have some guest star comic creators who are fighting monsters. David Schrader and Christian Horn, who are the co-creators of Baby Badass, are Hans and Schrader in this one. And Christian's middle name is Hans. And there's a story behind that whole thing. But basically, Dave and I were tabling at a convention, and I was drawing something like a couple guys, I think it was for another Monster Matador, a couple guys in a jungle. And I just started like the name Hans and Schrader just popped in my head, and it kind of went from there. And Schrader is kind of like, if you take Werner Herzog and mix him with Arnold Schwarzenegger, that's the character. And Hans is sort of like his sidekick. And then the other creator we have in here is Ryland Grant, who has been on the show a lot. And Ryland is actually just Ryland in this book, which is funny. In the original Predator movie, Shane Black, who's the screenwriter for those that don't know, Lethal Weapon, Iron Man 3, The Last Boy Scout, he actually had a role in that movie. They put him in the movie because they wanted him to do rewrites on the movie, and I guess he didn't want to do them, so they killed him off right away. So I thought it would be cool to have a screenwriter in the book, and since that's what Ryland does, he's a screenwriter. He writes action movies. Ryland is in there, and he basically plays himself. I was initially going to kill him off right away, but once you start writing and you get kind of like the characters in the room, all the kind of personalities come out and the conflicts and all this stuff. And there's him and Schrader were just kind of like, there's just a lot of funny stuff in there. But so yeah, there's a whole team. There's about, I kind of killed Fabio on this one because it's a team of 10. It's like a big team of people. And Fabio had to draw all of them. And every day I get a message like, can I kill them yet? Can I kill them yet?
You're like, no.
Not yet. But the great thing about Fabio is that, and the thing is, like, I've been working with him now long enough to know how he lays out pages and how he draws and whatever. And he's really good at using laying things out where you never really lose track of that all the characters are there. And he's one of the few artists that actually uses like silhouettes and things like that in a way that actually like works, rather than just like, oh, I'm just doing a silhouette because I don't want to draw. He has a really graphic element to the way he does things.
Yeah.
So he was he was dying on this book, but
Well,
it's good, you know, it's good for him, you know.
it's funny because
Builds character.
I feel like when you were on the show back in the spring, you had this idea already coming, you were coming up with it, and I felt like you mentioned that you were going to have some creators on it, like, and in the book, and I went in thinking like, oh, like one of the characters is going to look like Ryland, and then I'm reading it and I'm like, oh no, this is the character's name is actually Ryan Grant, and I'm like, and he acts just like Ryan.
Yeah, it was just like once you start once I started writing and I was like, oh god damn, this is like actually like if the apocalypse happened, this is probably what he would be doing, you know.
So how did you approach your friends, like, hey, I want to draw you guys and have you guys in comics? Like, were they like,
yeah, I mean with Dave and Christian, it just kind of grew out of this thing, you know, out of that conversation. They were just like, yeah, whatever. And then Ryland and I are part of a small group. We actually read each other's scripts, and so we're pretty good friends. And I threw it out there to him, and he was like, you know, yeah, do it, you know. So when they make the movie, you know, they'll have to. No, but it's fun. It's a weird thing because it's not something you want to do all the time, you know.
Right.
And usually when you throw someone in, it's like, you know, a panel or whatever. So this one was, you know, obviously they've read the script, they've been kind of involved in it along the way. But I think part of the appeal was knowing that Fabio was going to be drawing it.
Right.
And I mean, it's literally like, you know, I mean, Fabio has a very realistic style. So I'm sure Ryland is just waiting to show his 5-year-old, like, look, this is, you know, this is your dad. You know, I did all those, like, he has one of those things where he's like, you know, put the hand up to stop or whatever, you know, all the, like, you know, the kind of tropes, those action movie tropes and stuff like that. So
it's so good. And I think he's reading the issue of Banjax.
He's reading the issue of Banjax.
Well, and it's funny because I know, like, you go in the movies and comics and you're like, oh, I feel like this person's gonna, you know, there's no way Fabio is not gonna want to kill him after all his work. So I'm like, I can't wait to see that.
It was funny because he had done issue 2 of the Jump right before he did this book. And the Jump is a great book. It's a very different book than Monster Matador. It's a little more cerebral, and it's dense, and it's incredibly challenging to draw.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, you know, it really is, because it's and you know, Ryland, I can tell you from his scripts, he's, you know, every panel, every balloon, everything has a purpose, and everything has to be a specific way. It's a really interesting concept about oh my god, like, they go out, I can't even think what it is now. They're out of body, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
I'm blanking on too. I've talked about it on my show twice.
But anyway, but it's
astral projection.
Astral projection. So it goes between worlds.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like in one world and then you're another. So he's, you know, Fabio's constantly having to sort of like, every world, you know, the worlds look a certain way, and you know, so everything has to be like. And I think by the time he was done with issue 2, he was ready, literally ready to kill Ryland. And yeah, but what was nice was that by the time he got to Matador, he just was in this kind of mode where he just wanted to cut loose.
Yeah.
And so this book was actually like, it was like almost cathartic for him. And I think he kind of just like kicked so much ass on it, because it was just like, or, you know, he's just drawing people like shooting and fighting and like pure action. So it was just like, it was a good kind of like follow up to what he was doing there. But I'm sure he had a lot of fun.
Oh, for sure.
Can I kill Ryland yet?
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and I love the idea of all the different styles of the monster killers in this.
Yeah.
The different personalities, the different, you know, ways that they go about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's a brilliant idea. So I like, how was that like trying to create the different, like, because they're completely different characters through and through, but you
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
have some
yeah.
fun doing that and processing that.
Yeah, you know, with obviously with the three I mentioned, they were, I mean, you kind of, I mean, they already had kind of personalities ish. Dave Schrader, I should mention, is also he's a director, and he has a YouTube channel called, I think it's Highbrow Films, and he has a lot of short films on there, and he's like these kind of like comedy-ish films, so it's very much in character for him as his film, you know, persona.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the other characters, he just kind of grows out of like, you know, you want like contrast. So there's kind of like this British guy, Johnny, who's kind of like the loner, who's good with knives. There's this like badass Israeli chick who's just like, you know, wants to kill monsters and get laid by, you know. And then there's Kalisha, who's the leader of it, and she's the one who recruited everyone, and she's kind of like this enigmatic person who kind of runs this almost like mercenary thing that like in South Africa, but there's also like they're part of like this wider kind of resistance against the monsters.
Yeah.
And then there's two guys in there. They're kind of like the buddies, you know, so they're the ones kind of like cracking jokes with everyone. They're kind of like, you know, the balance to everyone there is like this like hardcore badass. Like I have to
Right.
be a badass, and they're just kind of like, you know, having fun. I think that's everybody.
It's
And the Matador, and the fun thing about the Matador in this one is the Matador is used to being in charge.
right.
So, but he's been recruited. So it's like you've got this tension. There's this tension between him and Kalisha throughout the entire thing, where he keeps trying to like step up and be the leader, and she's like putting him back in his place. But there's also this kind of like sexual tension between them. So it's like this really like fun little kind of back and forth throughout the whole thing. Is they're like, you don't know whether they're gonna, you know, make out or like, you know, start fighting each other or
Right.
whatever. So
Well, it's interesting because you do definitely see that, like, you know, there's a couple panels that's like, he's like tries to tell the team to do something. She's like, I hired you. Like,
yeah, yeah,
you work for me. Like, and it's another way that you get to see the growth of the character,
right.
because it almost like this is it's a lot more of an ensemble of a
Mhm.
book where I don't want to say the Matador takes a back seat, but it's a more of a level playing field for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, it was when I do these books, and like, you know, you'll see in the next one or whatever, like when I do these books, I try to do something different in each
Mhm.
one, because, you know, at its core the concept is basically, you know, go to the next town, fight a monster, right? You know,
Right.
I mean, it gets kind of boring after a while. So part of the fun, part of the, you know, the approach is to say, how can I do this differently? How can I like kind of twist it in a way that it's not just that same thing over and over again? And part of it is obviously it's building out that world, but part of it is also like in here where, okay, he's not necessarily like, it's not just him this time, you know, now it's like he's got to deal with a team of people. So it just kind of it mixes stuff up a bit and keeps it fresh.
Now because I know you did with Monster Matador, you laid the groundwork, you built the origin of that, you know, of that character.
Yeah.
Writing this book, has there been a character that you've started to like write with and go, man, I would love to explore this person's world more?
Yeah. I mean, the Hans and Schrader character. You know, I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger mixed with Werner Herzog is just like, you know, I mean, it can write that. I can write that forever. Um, Kalisha, the woman who's in charge in this one, like there's, you know, at some point what I'd like to do is kind of like get this kind of like solidified and then do some like spin-offs
Mm,
kind of
that'd
like
be
to the
cool.
world. So I did, like I said, I did the initial groundwork, but I actually wrote and drew them, and I am nowhere near the artist that Fabio is. And originally, it was a different artist that was going to do the book, who was a bit more of a cartoony style, and it was an easier transition, kind of that made more
Yep.
sense. But like, it just doesn't really, it, like, it's such a contrast between what I did and what he did.
Yeah.
So the first Kickstarter we did, Tango the Matadors, was sort of like a soft reboot relaunch. And what we're going to do is not the next book, but the book after is going to, and it flows into the story in a way, in a natural way. It's going to be called The Beginning. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to kind of have the Matador recount his origin and what he did in those issues. And that'll tie into the bigger story for the next phase that comes,
Awesome.
which is it's called Once Upon Some Monsters in Mexico trilogy, but it's actually 4 books because we're doing the origin in there, but whatever.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So, I love it that, I mean,
Yeah.
this is a world that you have, like I said at the beginning, it's such a vast world you've created. And I love that we're not seeing the end of it anytime soon, it sounds like.
Yeah, and you'll see it open up in ways like each book opens it up a little more and more, and then like, at some point you'll be like, oh wow, okay, this is like, now I get like the big story that he's telling.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about the book. We've talked about the Kickstarter a little bit, that it's on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I feel like you always do have some unique rewards or opportunities on a Kickstarter. Is there something this go around that you're like, I'm excited for?
I got nothing for you. No, okay, so here's what we did. So I commissioned Tony Donnelly, who is one of my favorite artists. He did a book called Albert Einstein Time Mason, and he's got this really cool, almost kind of like a throwback style.
Okay.
And he did a movie poster for this book. And there's the regular version, okay, and for just $5 more. $5. This is the deal of the century, okay? You get the movie, it's a limited signed edition, the movie poster cover with a signed book plate. It's going to be signed by me, by Tony Donnelly, by Ryland Grant, by David Schrader, and by Christian Horn. So like, I mean, I want, it's not about like, making money on this stuff. Like I really want people to get excited about the book and really kind of throw in something special for them. And that one's going to come with a folded 11x17 movie poster.
That's awesome.
Every physical reward comes with a press photo, which is a black and white. I don't know how well you can see it of this. This is like the cast photo that we did over here.
So good.
So it'll be like a press photo that you would get with a movie marketing materials. We're going to do actually like stretch goals and bonuses. There will be a physical like print of this one too, that I'm sure by the time the thing is over, we'll hit it. Everyone will get that. We're going to do one of our stretch goals is going to be we're going to extend the book. We're going to add 4 pages to the book if we hit this, and it's going to extend the ending a little bit by a page. It'll be an extra page in the ending. There's a pinup from Don Walker, who did Dreadnought the Barbarian, that we'll commission you, and a couple extra pages in there with pinups and things like that too.
Sweet.
So we've got some stuff planned.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to ask, because I always know like you're always trying. I think like you always try to figure something different, a little unique, and I love it. And like I love that you're diving into the movie aspect of this, like because I mean it felt like a movie. Reading it, I'm like, wow, yep, okay, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So I love that you're embracing that for sure. Yeah. Well, I feel like we can talk all day. But I want to ask, I know because I know you had I think it came out this summer, you were in an anthology on Kickstarter. What is it?
Nightmare Theater Anthology. Yeah. Which was a bunch of indie creators doing horror stories. That was put together by Clay Adams, who did Red Xmas for Scout Comics. There's actually, I'm not in it because I didn't have a chance to do anything, but there's a lot of great creators. They're doing another one next week, I think. It's dropping for around Halloween on Kickstarter.
Oh, cool.
We'll be running at the same time.
Okay.
But they're doing
great. I'll have to be supporting that too.
Yeah, I know, that's right. It's like great, another one of these. But I think they're going to be running that annually.
Okay, nice. Yeah, because I had Clay on sometime, and we were talking about that too. And I remember, like you were in that Kickstarter. Charlie Stickney was in that, I
Charlie
believe.
was there, Dave Pepos was in
Yep.
there, Richard Fairgray, Carla Nappi,
Yeah, like so a
a
bunch of
lot of
people.
so many people in there. Yeah.
So it's just like, all right. I felt like Clay is like, all right, who does Bearded interview? Okay, cool. We'll bring that on.
It's like 300 pages too. It's like, I mean,
It's yeah, it's a really good, and it was very good size for the price. Like it was
yeah.
well done. So I know you had that. You obviously you're doing a lot in your Monster Matador world. Is that all your focus right now, or are you trying to dabble in some other things too?
Yeah, I've got like two other projects that, I mean, they're like in various stages of development,
Okay.
but it's it's hard. I don't want to like overstretch myself
Yeah.
because we're focusing on the Kickstarter stuff right now. Um, I it's like one of those things too. It's kind of like, um, one, it's it costs, it's money
Right.
too, but it's also like you'll see creators sometimes they'll do a book and then they'll do another book and then they'll do another book, but it's just kind of like, wait a minute, you got to finish that other book. So
Right.
I kind of want to, like, to me the important thing with Monster Matador is I wanted to kind of get this first arc out there, which is
Yep.
Tango, and then this one, which is like a nice chunk of Monster Matador. Uh, so readers can really kind of like not just get into the world, but really get into the character. You've got
Right.
almost now it'll be almost like 200 pages of it. So it's a nice chunk of work, and we did it, and I wanted to get it out at a fast clip. So we did our first one in June of 2020, and now it's I don't know what it is, September, no, October
October.
2021, right? So
Yeah.
it's less than a year and a half. We've done uh almost 200 pages of content
Yeah.
within that time. I just kind of wanted to build that connection with the audience, and have them build that connection with the character, and
Very cool.
like have more than like one issue. So I'm sure like after this Kickstarter, we'll probably kind of take a look and get started on the next one, and then at the same time parallel I'll kind of see
Gotcha.
what the other project is. And
Nice.
one's a crime book and the other one is sort of a spy comedy, so I'm not
Oh,
sure. Yeah.
very cool. Well,
Yeah.
I'm down for either one of those, so that'll
Yeah.
be great. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for hopping on the show and just taking some time to talk about your comics with me and Monster Matador. Gang, it is on Kickstarter. It is a blast. I've gotten to read a little bit of it. I can't wait to finish it because it's a big boy, and I'm excited to just see where you go with the world, because you stinker. You set it up at the end, and I'm like, oh no, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is gonna be the last page. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, this is the last page. Like, he's gonna do it to me. Yep.
I also want to point out, everyone was talking about that movie, that Zack Snyder movie, Army of the Dead, and they were like, "Oh, the zombie tiger, the zombie tiger." Monster Matador had the zombie tiger first. I'm just letting you know that it was in Tangle of the Matadors, which came out like 6 months before Army of the Dead. So
Just
who,
so
who
you know.
knows? Who knows what they'll be ripping off from this one, right?
Right. Who knows? So get it now, because this will be the first appearance.
Exactly, exactly. First zombie, I should get that CGC.
But
First
gang,
zombie tiger.
definitely go support this Kickstarter. The rewards in and of themselves seem like something you have to go get. But with that being said, thanks again, Stephen, for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good talking to you.
Absolutely. So gang, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.